Thanks for joining us on the CBN News Channel. I'm Charlene Israel. Tensions rising today as the search for NSA leaker Edward Snowden continues. He failed to board his flight from Russia to Cuba on Monday. Now the U.S. and Russia are in a standoff over his fate. It's a cat and mouse chase, and it's proving to be a costly one for the U.S. The Obama administration is increasing pressure on Russia to hand over former U.S. spy agency contractor Edward Snowden. The effort to extradite him has already frayed ties between Washington and Beijing.
This was a deliberate choice by the government to release a fugitive despite a valid arrest warrant, and that decision unquestionably has a negative impact on the U.S.-China relationship.
Now it's threatening ties with Russia as well. Authorities there continuing to ignore the requests of the U.S. to arrest Snowden.
We expect the Russians to examine the options available to them to expel Mr. Snowden for his return to the United States.
Snowden is believed to be hiding out in the Russian airport. He checked in Monday for his flight to Cuba, but his seat was empty the entire trip.
No special passengers today, no.
Today, Russia's foreign minister went so far as to say that Snowden never even crossed the border into Russia. He also called the U.S. demands to extradite the fugitive ungrounded and unacceptable. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange is helping Snowden. He told reporters over the phone that Snowden is healthy, safe, and in good hands.
Edward Snowden is not a traitor. He is not a spy. He is a whistleblower who has told the public an important truth.
Assange says the government of Ecuador has provided Snowden with refugee travel documents. He's said to be making his way there for political asylum. Meanwhile, U.S. frustration is growing, along with its concerns that the leaks have already dealt a major blow to national security. Officials say there are signs that terrorist groups are finding ways to evade U.S. detection based on information released by the leaker. And joining us now for more is Dr. Paul Bonicelli. He is Executive Vice President of Regent University, and he served in the George W. Bush administration. Thanks for joining us this morning.
My pleasure.
Now, the Obama administration says that China deliberately let Snowden go. Why would China do that?
I think they deliberately let him go because they don't want the problem of having him there. I think that we may find out they didn't want him to even come there, and once he did, they did the wrong thing, but they got him off their hands.
That is really crazy. Well, the Russians are refusing to hand him over and even have said that he never even entered the country. What are they up to?
They're going to play a much more aggressive game. I mean, these are the fruits of a foreign policy that says that if you just talk and get along with people, everything will work out. And Vladimir Putin has been waiting a long time for an American president that he can push around. And I'm afraid he's getting away with that. He'll make the most of it that he can. If there's any more intelligence to get, they'll try to get it. But more than anything, this is to pressure the United States and really knock us down a peg, I think.
What is this whole fiasco doing to our image around the world?
I think it is demonstrating the reality of that image for a while. The president came into office having campaigned that he was not going to use military might, he was not going to use the aggression of the United States or the force of the United States to protect our interests. People understood that, and now they know that they can get away with whatever they want to. It'll be a scramble to get away as much as you can until the president finally has to snap and say, no more pushing us around, and it may be too late like it was for Jimmy Carter.
Wow. Talk about the damage that the leaks are really, how it's impacting.
It's hard to know how wide the damage is, but just psychologically it's huge because this is a program that while we knew it existed to some degree, it was talked about in 2006. The details that he's released, we don't know yet. If he really did get names, if he got the schema that shows the networks that we have across the world for using this data, for gathering this data, it could be quite severe. And whether this thing is more PR stunt for WikiLeaks and Edward Snowden to feel good about himself, or if it's a serious breach, we don't know yet. But psychologically already, it's pretty bad.
Talk about the U.S.-China relations and how it's going to affect that and how it's getting worse.
I think that, as I said earlier, I think the Chinese didn't want this to happen. They don't want this to. They wanted a little bit of a black eye for the U.S. because we are on them all the time about cybersecurity, about hacking into our systems for commercial as well as security interests. But I don't think they want to see a long-term breach, which is why they have gotten him out of the country, I believe, out of China.
Well, some are still saying that Snowden is just a whistleblower. They point out that he did not sell his information to a foreign country. What's your view on that?
I don't think he's a whistleblower because there's a proper procedure for that. You go to a member of Congress, you declare yourself, you do the best that you can to have your bona fides out there, that you're just trying to expose what you think is a crime or something like that. He's done nothing like this. He's gone straight into the arms of people who are opposed to the United States, none of whom are friends of information, or rather liberty when it comes to the internet or the press. So he's not really a whistleblower, I don't think.
We're certainly keeping our eye on this one. Dr. Bonicelli, thanks for joining us. We appreciate your time. A historic week at the U.S. Supreme Court. The justices will soon issue decisions on gay marriage in March of this year. They heard arguments in two cases: the Defense of Marriage Act, that's the federal law defining marriages between one man and one woman, and California's Proposition 8, the state's voter-approved ban on gay marriage. Since the High Court took up the issue, 3 states in the country have approved same-sex marriage measures. Both sides in the gay marriage battle are anxious to see how the court's ruling might affect those laws. A test case for affirmative action in college admissions survived a Supreme Court review, but the case is far from over. The justices sent it back to a federal appeals court in New Orleans because they said the lower court, quote, did not apply the highest level of judicial scrutiny. 7 justices agreed with Justice Anthony Kennedy's opinion that a court should uphold the use of race as a factor in admissions as a last resort. An immigration reform bill that offers citizenship to millions is one step closer to passing the Senate. A final vote to send the bill to the House is expected Thursday or Friday. Debate is raging in Washington not only about the bill, but about the threat it poses to the Republican Party. John Waggy explains.
Some in the GOP are sending out dire warnings that the party is through if it doesn't get on the right side of the immigration bill.
If we don't pass immigration reform, if we don't get it off the table in a reasonable, practical way, it doesn't matter who you run in 2016. We're in a demographic death spiral as a party, and the only way we can get back in good graces with the Hispanic community, in my view, is pass comprehensive immigration reform. If you don't do that, it really doesn't matter who we run, in my view.
But many conservatives are concerned that politics is pushing lawmakers to pass a 1,200-page immigration bill in the same way Congress passed Obamacare in 2009. Without even knowing how it will affect the country.
I reject the idea that this policy reform of fixing our broken immigration system should be done for political or electoral reasons. I think that's the wrong reason, and I think it could lead to a bad result, because then when you say that we have to do this for political reasons, you may end up swallowing a bad policy out of a misplaced desperation.
Kentucky Senator Rand Paul says he won't support the bill after his amendment to enforce border security first failed. But he's urging Republicans to appeal to Americans of all races and ages.
We need to have this optimism, this happiness about our party that is people, that it is enticing to people. It needs to appeal to people of all races. When we look like America, when we have tattoos, without tattoos, with ponytails, without ponytails.
For the Democrats, Senate Majority Whip Chuck Schumer's immigration push has been a brilliant political strategy, shoving the IRS and Benghazi scandals to the side and dividing Republicans with a goal of adding millions of Democratic voters.
This is going to be a historic week for the Senate as we pass comprehensive immigration reform. We're about at 2/3 of the Senate right now. Our momentum is growing, so I believe we'll be in the neighborhood of 70 votes by the time the vote occurs at the end of the week.
Schumer also cautioned on CNN Sunday that he could see 1 million demonstrators meeting on the Mall if House Republicans try to bottle up or substantially change the Senate's version of the bill, a sign that Democrats hope it will be a wedge issue to help them take over the House in 2014. But Senator Paul doesn't seem to be intimidated.
It'll pass the Senate, but it's dead on arrival in the House. The House is much closer to me, and I think they think border security has to come first before you get immigration reform.
John Waggy, CBN News.
President Obama is announcing new plans to bypass Congress in his fight against climate change. He's targeting coal-fired power plants with new carbon dioxide emission limits. Those limits will be the first to ever be enforced on new and existing power plants. Opponents have accused President Obama of declaring war on coal, arguing his regulations will shut down the coal industry. The Heritage Foundation says it's actually a war on American families, businesses, and jobs. Their analysis shows Obama's coal campaign could increase electricity prices by 20%, and cause hundreds of thousands of job losses. Meanwhile, the president is also announcing billions of dollars for renewable energy projects. Well, severe storms pummeled parts of the plains and upper Midwest states Monday. In Illinois, high winds and torrential rains triggered mudslides, downed trees, and blew over vehicles on highways. Heavy rains also flooded parts of southwestern Indiana and Wisconsin. In New Hampshire, a major storm caused dangerous lightning. 23 Boy Scouts and 3 adult counselors suffered burns after lightning struck a camp in Belmont. The Scouts and their leaders were huddled under a shelter at the time. Officials say no one was directly hit.
It could have hit the tent, it could have hit the ground and traveled through. The tent could have been anchored with a rope onto a tree, it could have traveled. There's so many different ways when you get lightning strikes that things can travel.
Forecasters say more severe weather is expected across that same region today. Republicans in the Texas House have passed a series of abortion restrictions. The bill bans abortions after the 20th week of pregnancy. It also requires doctors to have admitting privileges at nearby hospitals, and it limits abortions to surgical centers. Supporters say the bill protects women's health. Opponents warn it could shut down 37 of the 42 abortion clinics in the state. The bill heads next to the Texas Senate, but Democrats have threatened a filibuster to stop it from reaching Governor Rick Perry's desk. Calvary Church founder Chuck Smith has suffered a setback in his battle with lung cancer. A Facebook page devoted to praying for Smith reports that doctors found cancer cells in fluid in his lungs and say the cancer is now in stage 4. Smith's daughter and church family request continued prayer. Coming up, Syrian refugees take shelter in Jordan and find compassion from a Christian ministry.
Hello? Is this thing on? Hey, kids, do you love games? And do you love discovering things? Well, do ya?
Then you're gonna love this. It's the new free Superbook Kids Bible app. You can play games, watch videos, find answers to your questions, and a whole lot more. The new Superbook Kids Bible app. Free downloads available on iTunes now.
The United States has around 900 troops and military personnel in Jordan to strengthen its defenses and protect it from the civil war next door in Syria. Some of the troops are holdovers from a joint military exercise near Jordan's border with Syria. A deteriorating situation under President Bashar al-Assad had 19 nations coming together in a show of power. Fighter jets, tanks, and attack helicopters trained in Jordan, sending a clear message to Syria that forces could intervene.
This will at least provide, I think, some comfort for the people here that there is at least something here that might be able to protect us.
Jordan says the number of U.S. forces is small and isn't intended for a war on Syria. Well, Jordan is not only a training ground for military exercises, it's also a refuge for Syrians fleeing the fighting. For the past 2 years, hundreds of thousands of Syrians have left their country. As Chris Mitchell found out, many are finding help from Jordan's Christians.
Osama is just one of Syria's 600,000 refugees.
The situation in Syria is very bad, very dangerous. President Assad destroyed everything. He destroyed homes. I live in homes. He destroyed the city, and most of them have no work, no food, no water, no electricity. They are in a bad situation now.
According to the UN, these refugees are spread across Turkey, Lebanon, and Jordan. Now some of those refugees and their children are finding relief. Some churches in Jordan are trying to redeem the tragedy in Syria, and many of these Syrian refugees here are experiencing the love of Christians for the very first time.
They said, "You dealing with us like a human?"
This pastor reaches out to hundreds of these refugees. It's dangerous work, so we hid his identity for security reasons.
Take this opportunity to show the light inside the darkness. The people go outside Syria, they're hopeless, and also before they didn't have chance to listen about the gospel or about Jesus. But right now we have a chance to show them the love and mercy and our faith through what we do for them.
Their help includes hot meals, church services for the children, and clothes for families who often have nothing but what is on their backs. Some of these children went from conditions like this to this. And there are opportunities to talk with someone about their situation. Many of these Muslim women, some now widowed, would not have stepped inside a church in Syria.
They didn't allow anybody to talk with them about Jesus. But here, because they are in need, and we don't want to say that we are using their needs, but while we feeding them and taking care of them, there is opportunity to share the love of God, which is more important than the food and than the clothes. So we are caring about their souls as we care about their bodies.
It's a ministry Osama appreciates.
We need it. It's good for us right now because we didn't have any work. We need all the help we can get. It makes a difference for us right now.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jordan.
Up next, the alarming number of Americans who are entering their golden years and sitting on a goose egg for their nest egg. Find out what's being done to help these seniors and what you can do to avoid being one of them. When it comes to growing old in America, there's good news and bad news. Workers are living longer, but they're not saving enough, which could mean unpleasant retirement. And they can't expect the government to take care of them. Al Dumar started making ice cream cones at his family-owned restaurant back in 1946. At 91, his love for the job keeps him going.
A lot of people just like me, too, the old-timers that just keep on working anyhow. When they pass retirement age, they just keep on.
Son Thad Dumar runs the eatery today. He credits his dad for teaching him to work hard and not depend on the government.
My dad was born in 1922, before Social Security started. He told me that he is the once and future America because he said, when I was a kid, people worked until they died. And he said, based on the way things are going, you younger folks are going to be working until you die as well, or until very, very near the end.
Unlike Big Al, more and more workers will stay on the job and put off retirement due to bad financial planning and not enough savings.
Absolutely. You see people working longer.
When it comes to retirement, most Americans work until around age 65, some even longer. But when it comes to saving for retirement, most workers come up short.
I don't think I'll ever retire, but I think it's a question of money. I don't, Social Security benefits are unreliable. So we're going to have to stay really healthy and really active.
According to research, more than half of American households risk not having saved enough to maintain their standard of living in retirement.
I haven't saved enough for retirement. I think I'm going to work as long as I can.
He's among the 28% of Americans who have no confidence they will have enough money to retire comfortably. Jack Vanderhei says that's the worst confidence level in the study's history.
We find that about 44% of the households will run short of money in retirement. And it's even worse if you look at the low-income quartile. In that case, it's over 60% will run short of money sometime in retirement.
Vanderhei says many expect to live off Social Security benefits and depend on Medicare to cover doctor's bills. However, Social Security is on track to run out by 2033.
Within 2 decades, we're looking at a situation where the trust fund itself is likely to be depleted. That doesn't mean, as some people unfortunately think, that means no Social Security benefits, but it does mean that there will be only enough money available to pay about 72 to 75% of what was promised.
When the Social Security Trust Fund was introduced in the 1930s, life expectancy didn't even reach the retirement age of 65. Life expectancy in 1930 added up to only 58 years for men and 62 for women. That formula became quickly outdated, and over the next 60 years, the number of seniors exploded. In the 30s, only 6.7 million Americans lived to be 65 or older. By the year 2000, that number grew to almost 35 million. Currently, 58 million Americans receive Social Security benefits, and the government's not prepared to cover the country's growing cost of retirement. So people like Tamara Rowe are preparing.
Maxing out my retirement accounts
the thrift savings plan. I also have a Roth IRA.
Rose started putting away for her golden years while in her 20s.
I started at 25. I guess because I've always hung around people who were older than I, and so back when I was 25, if you read the business section of the newspaper, you would hear people weren't saved enough for retirement. Then I hear now it's worse.
Worse, but not too late, says Vanderhyde.
It's a crisis that could be solved if people would realize their future plight today and start doing something about it.
For the Dumars, that something has always been clear.
Ultimately, maybe we're heading back to the point where we have to trust ourselves and rely on ourselves as opposed to someone else coming in to save us. And a lot of people are really, I think, counting too much on the government to save the day. You know, the government is very short-term oriented, and all the politicians are just concerned about the next election. They're not concerned about how things are going to be for our kids or our grandchildren or for the future of the country.
So the key is, it's never too late to start. Wherever you are, start saving right now. Stay with us. We'll be right back after this. Finally today, a special graduation for some very special students. These 4 to 7-year-olds are all profoundly deaf, but they've learned how to talk and be understood at the Center for Hearing and Speech. And now they're ready to graduate and move on to classes at mainstream schools.
We brought some cupcakes.
What kind of cupcakes?
A graduation cupcakes.
To see her from where she started at to the point to where she is now is really emotional.
They might not understand why they have to wear caps and gowns, but they do know that joining the hearing world is a big deal. They even delivered speeches that they committed to memory.
Nah, I never think she's gonna make it, but she make it. This school really helped her a lot.
All of the students will begin kindergarten or first grade classes in the fall. They're just all adorable. We wish them the best. Well, that's going to do it for now on the CBN News Channel. You can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about at cbnnews.com. And tell us what you think about the stories you've seen today on Facebook or at CBN News on Twitter. Have a great day and God bless.
Introducing the CBN Bible from CBN.com. Now, an easier way to study the Bible and grow in your faith. Highlight your favorite verse. Read separate versions at a glance. Click and read a commentary. Or cross-reference your favorite verse using the Strong's Concordance. All the right tools to study the Bible, all in one place. The CBN Bible, available at cbn.com/Bible or the iTunes App Store.